What can we learn from the Treaty of Paris in 1783? Are we about to make some of the same mistakes that our founding fathers made in 1873 with the Treaty of Paris and the Russo-Ukraine debacle? We're going to talk about that. Also, we're going to look at Signalgate. Is it a nothing burger? Is it a something burger? Is it the end of the world? Well, I think both sides have done a poor job of it, but it really is small. We'll talk about it and we'll lay it out. The loneliness epidemic in America and in the West. Why is that happening? We're going to talk about that. Of course, we're going to get into all of it. Now, today, Jonathan Fiala here, sitting in the chair of philosophy for Further Every Day. I am joined by Miss Nicki.
Good day. How are you?
Doing all right. You?
I'm good. Doing
Glad to
well.
have you there in the chair of theology.
Yes.
Which informs our thought, and our thought needs to be rigorous. In the chair of philosophy, to my left, I've got in the chair of culture, downstream of thought, is Charlie.
I'm the kid.
You're the kid?
I'm the kid.
Charlie the kid. And to his left, downstream, is Steve.
Yes.
How's it going, Steve?
Politically incorrect here, staying, man, and
Always.
keeping the water warm downstream.
Yeah, I didn't need to know that, but you do
that's
say it
all right.
every
It's
week now.
still there.
It's a recurring meme with you.
Yes.
Okay. So, and then of course, Mr. Producer is
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, he's wondering what he's doing with his
Well,
life
that's what happens
in the
when
producer's
you
chair. So Ryan,
bathe
thank
in a
you
river.
for being here. Ryan, the producer guy, as always,
Let's
thank
just
you.
keep going, Mr. Steve, okay?
Yeah, okay. You've made him uncomfortable. You made Ryan uncomfortable, which is not hard, but shame on you. Anyway, moving on. Cut number 1. Let's talk about the Treaty of Paris of 1783. Now, here you can see in cut 1, this is the opening, and now I'd actually like to read it in just a moment, but for now, let's go ahead and move on to cut number 2. Here we see the two delegations. Oh, wait a minute. We only see the American delegation. For those of you watching on video, you can see from left to right, John Jay, John Adams, Ben Franklin, Henry Lawrence, and William Temple. The British contingent refused to pose for this. So despite the flowery language, which is predominantly, Jay's and Franklin's work, there was not a lot of unity here. There were still some sour notes. So cut number 3, if you can pull that up. And here is the map as we see it being drawn up. If you look closely, and again, links in the description as always on Further Every Day on the Rumble or YouTube, you can find it there to where we're getting this. However, you can see how America was cut up. And on the map on the right, which is a little bit more of a proper map, you can see how the Brits still held the northern territories of Canada, which we talked about last week, or 2 or 3 weeks ago, rather, in John Adams' letter to Abigail Adams, how we almost could have had Canada way back when, but we did not.
Yep.
And you see a lot of territory that's ceded back to the Spanish or to the British by Massachusetts and Connecticut. So it was all of this being in flux. So important thing. Moving into the opening, which we actually had pictured there. It's going to be the next cut, Mr. Producer. Let's dive into it. I think this language is important. It having pleased the divine providence to dispose the hearts of the most serene and most potent prince of George III, by the grace of God, King of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, Defender of the Faith, Duke of Brunswick and Lunenburg, Arch-Treasurer and Prince-Elector of the Holy Roman Empire, etc., and the United States of America to forget all past misunderstandings and differences that have unhappily interrupted the good correspondence and friendship they mutually wish to restore. I think it's important that we realize that these men do not sound like simple agnostic men when it comes to their politics. They are... everything that they do, they reference God. Mm-hmm. In everything that they do, they reference God. That's something that I just think is really important in a world of grade school social studies where they say, the founding fathers weren't really religious and Franklin was a deist and Jefferson was a deist. It's just not the case. So just that out of the way. Next cut, Mr. Producer. And to establish such a beneficial and satisfactory intercourse between the two countries upon the ground of reciprocal advantages and mutual conveniences as may promote and secure both perpetual peace and harmony. This is going to be important later when we're talking about the Russo-Ukraine thing. And having for this desirable end already laid the foundation of peace and reconciliation by the provisional articles signed at Paris on the 30th of November, 1782. Now, when you have a peace treaty, what do you need to ensure and secure?
Well, I would hope that the one thing would be peace.
And the reasons, therefore, there needs to be an incentive.
Yes, that's
And I'll tell you, you brought up the Russo-Ukraine thing there after reading that, and the one that went through my mind was Greenland.
Mm-hmm. Needs to be an incentive.
Yeah. It's amazing to me as we have been going through this in just for clarity to the listeners and watchers. I'm not one that has studied this in depth up until we've started working on this. And it's amazing to me the similarities of what's going on today versus what was happening then. Mm-hmm. It is astounding, because I guess the other thing that really comes to my mind when I think about this, I look at something like the Bible that was put together over the course of 1,500 years and done about 2,000 years ago, and yet the relevance that it has today is just as much as what it was then.
Correct.
So when we're talking about, and I want to be clear, people know I'm not putting the U.S. Constitution on the level of the divine. Please, no. But in the same respect, I think that God gives men incredible wisdom to see things far into the future. And when you look at people like John Jay and others that were putting this stuff together, the things that they were able to see when they did the pathology, it's astounding.
well. Benjamin Franklin said, "This will be good for about 200 years."
The
Then
United
it'll
States
be-
Constitution.
Yes.
Yeah.
And because he knew human nature and I
Right.
think we're seeing that today.
Correct. So I promise, I am getting to the connection between that treaty and this one. We will momentarily. His Britannic Majesty acknowledges the said United States, viz. New Hampshire, Massachusetts, I'm going to just skip down, et al., to be free, sovereign, and independent states, that he treats with them as such, and for himself, his heirs and successors, relinquishes all claims to the government, propriety, and territorial rights of the same and every part thereof. Saying, okay, you now relinquish all right to this. There's a reason why we're saying that. Just be thinking about the modern events. Be thinking about that. What are we going to have to do with Russia? Just put that into perspective, and then you have to enforce it. It's pie in the sky until you get to the point where you realize, oh, we have to actually enforce this. Go ahead, Mr. Producer. And all the disputes which might arise in the future on the subject of the boundaries of said United States may be prevented. It is hereby agreed and declared that the following are and shall be their boundaries, and it goes on to list those. I'm not going to go through all of that right now. It is agreed that the people of the United States shall continue to enjoy unmolested the right to take fish of every kind from the Grand Bank and from all the other banks of Newfoundland, and also the Gulf of St. Lawrence and other places in the sea where the inhabitants of both countries used at any time heretofore to fish. And also the inhabitants of the United States shall have liberty to take fish of every kind out of such party and coast of Newfoundland as British fishermen shall use. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, now you're just reading it. No. What was the cause of the War of 1812? What was one of the main causes? Forced conscription on the high seas of Americans by the Brits.
That's right.
Are they free to fish if they're going to be forced conscripted? So when we're making these treaties, and again, this is going to sound pedantic, but the Treaty of Paris of 1783 was a great treaty. It wasn't enforced, and we're going to get to why. And I'm going to draw the corollary here, because again, when we came on PSB, we were talking about what would be done here. By the way, if you're one of our regular listeners on YouTube or Rumble, or one of the hundreds of thousands of downloads on the audio podcast, anywhere podcasts are found. Thank you. PSB, we are on PSB Live from 1 to 3 Central Time, God's time, every Sunday. So you can come on here and chat. But one of the reasons why we started this segment is we wanted to go back into history and look at some of the corollaries and some of the value that you can find in the writings of the Founding Fathers and some of the wisdom, as Charlie was just alluding to. You're going to start to see where our correlation is, and it comes down to, can you enforce it? Can you enforce it? Go ahead, Mr. Producer. This is important. It's not directly relevant to what we're talking about, but I think it is important to note. It is agreed that the creditors on either side shall meet with no lawful impediment to the recovery of the full value of sterling money in all bona fide debts hereforto contracted. Next cut, Mr. Producer. It is agreed that all Congress shall earnestly recommend to the legislatures of the respective states to provide the restitution of all estates, rights, and properties which have been confiscated belonging to real British subjects. These two, and the next slide we're going to cover, are specifically saying we're not going to devalue our money, and the people on the loyalists, let me say it this way, the loyalists on the wrong pencil mark on the map are going to have an opportunity to get what is theirs back. They're going to have that opportunity while they have 12 months. If you read the language, it's 12 months or 6 months to vacate. The Brits, which we'll get back to in a moment, they had 12 months to vacate the forts, which they didn't, which is why we had the War of 1812 in such a successful manner. That the Brits' opening salvo was so successful, we didn't actually do a good job of that. And the first slide I read on this last two, excuse me, this one, you have an issue with the Americans not treating the loyalists properly in cashing out. That's what the Britons said. And that's why they maintain their forts, to keep an interest in the colony for the protection of loyalists. So again, a little bit more on that in just a bit. There's an interesting conversation to be had here. Next cut, Mr. Producer. That there shall be no future confiscations made nor prosecutions commenced by any person or persons for or by reason of the part which he or they may have taken in the present war, and that no person shall on that account suffer any future loss or damage either in his person, liberty, or property, and that those may be in confinement on such charge at the time of the ratification of the treaty in America shall be immediately set at liberty, and the prosecutions so commenced be discontinued. Okay. This is where the Brits said, you failed on this treaty, so we're going to keep fortifications in Fort Detroit. We call that Fort Detroit now, and or Detroit, and a few other places on the Great Lakes. This is the beginning of the end of the peace that the Treaty of 1783 held. Now, again, I promise we will tie this off even better. But for now, Mr. Producer, keep rolling. I just want to cram through this. That there shall be no future confiscations made nor prosecutions commenced against any person or persons by reason of the part. Thank you, Mr. Producer. All of this to say, you're going to hold to this, and you're not going to continue to persecute any loyalists. Now, here comes the part that I've alluded to, but we're actually going to read it, Mr. Producer. Leaving all fortifications, the American artillery that may be therein, and shall also order and cause all archives, records, and deeds of papers belonging to the said states or their citizens, which in the course of war may have fallen into the hands of the officers, forthwith be restored and delivered to the proper states and persons to whom they belong. Speaking of the Brits who were in control of fortifications and armaments of Americans, this was not properly enforced, and this is where they had a foothold between Canada, which we didn't take over at the time, and these forts, which were in the Indian and on the edge of American territories, on the colonial territories. This is where we lost the first half of the War of 1812, all the way back, and this treaty of 1783 not being properly enforced. No matter how good you write a treaty, if you don't enforce it, you are in trouble. So Mr. Producer, next one. There shall be a firm and perpetual peace between His Britannic Majesty and the said states, between the subjects and of the one and the citizens of the other. Wherefore all hostilities both by sea and land shall henceforth cease. Again, nice idea, but I do not think that it worked out well, mainly because it wasn't enforced. Mr. Producer, I'm going to ask you to skip to 16. Okay, go to 16 for me. This is my problem and my question, and I'm going to open this up to the panel now and maybe even some comments from folks on PSB. Ukraine-Russia may prolong war. This is just on the 26th of March in the year 2025 of our Lord. Russia may prolong war instead of finalizing a quote-unquote bad peace deal, U.S. intelligence assessment finds. Okay, and if you read the article down in there, Ukraine and Russia may see a greater incentive to prolong war instead of settling for an unfavorable peace deal, as unclassified U.S. intelligence assessment published in March 25 found. According to a report by the U.S. Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, the leader of the Ukraine and Russia, quote, for now probably still see the risks of a longer war as less than those of an unsatisfying settlement, Bloomberg reported. The intelligence assessment presented at the Senate Intelligence Committee falls in contrast with U.S. President Donald Trump's ambitions to quickly negotiate and secure a peace deal as soon as by Easter. Following discussions between the U.S. and Russia and Saudi Arabia, the two countries agreed on March 25th to implement a ceasefire in the Black Sea and ban all strikes against energy infrastructure. All right. Thoughts? Because Russia has said that they would limit, reduce, or stop these, and then they continue to strike into Ukraine, and Ukraine sends drones into Russian civilian targets. So
both of them haven't, but I don't think they have. The deal isn't it in April? The ceasefire doesn't begin until April.
Doesn't
And I
begin
think they're
until
trying
April.
to clean up.
Correct.
So Russia is the one in the best position here.
Oh yeah.
Ukraine doesn't have any more bodies to put on the front line.
Well, I would totally agree with that. But Russia has no incentive to quit. That's number one. Yeah. Number two, Zelensky doesn't have an incentive to quit. If he quits, if he agrees to a peace deal, he is out of power.
Period.
Within whatever
election cycle.
Yeah, it will happen. And many have speculated, and I totally understand why, that the reason that they have not quit is because he has kept in place what we would call our martial law, and they have a law that says if martial law is enacted, you're not having an election, and you can't have it until X months after the end of that martial law. So neither person has any incentive to quit. Your point about not having the bodies, I think there's a lot of truth in that, and I think that in the end is what would ultimately doom Ukraine. They're going to run out of people, which means they have no country.
Let me share this part with you. The 4 provinces that Russia has control of, I'm going to say that Russia does have an incentive, and it's the sanctions. They are the most sanctioned country in the world.
They have an economic issue right now.
Yes, and so I think that they will be encouraged, because part of this peace deal is you're going to lift some of these sanctions off us.
And that is the thing that you're talking. And I was going to say that Russia wants something.
Out of
there's
this.
going to be a peace deal. Russia wants something.
And that's what you do. You negotiate.
Exactly.
They're not going to give up they're not going to give up the land that they have.
They've taken it.
Yeah, it's theirs.
Right.
And I'm not really sure that the people in those provinces are upset about it. I'll just be honest with you.
I don't think so either.
I know, in our Bible study, we have a man who was in the military and has been to Ukraine. He said Ukrainians hate Russians. But these provinces are on the border. And I've told you that I have followed that Patrick Lancaster. And when he's with the Russian soldiers, and when they go in, the people are happy to see the Russian soldiers.
Yep.
And the people are talking about having family in Moscow. So they're very connected with Russia.
Well, it's a civil war.
Yes.
For all
This
intents
is
and
a-
purposes,
this is
that's
a-
what it is.
This is a
Yes.
30-something year civil war in the making, and someone's dropped this in the comment section. I was actually going to say, here's Russia's incentive. I don't know if you've heard about this. I didn't get a chance to throw it in the show map, so I'm sorry, Mr. Producer. But
I forgive you.
thank you. There is a bounty on babies right now. It's 100,000 rubles, which is about $1,700 for women to have the child. The reason why is their population is hitting the dirt. And despite Ukraine taking a mean licking, Russia has lost a lot of young men.
Yes.
And
Yes,
so
we
you
have.
actually do have a serious problem with Russia not having enough young men to support the economy.
Isn't that why they're going to, is it North Korea?
Yeah, they're going to North Korea and China, and they're
For
getting
help.
mercs. So I think they're going to have a serious issue. Yeah, and so Dearman drops us in. Russia will not give up Crimea.
Oh, no, absolutely.
It's their
That's not
only
even on
deep
the-
water access to the Black Sea for submarines.
Yeah, they're
and-
not giving that up.
But I go back and you guys make an interesting point on the issue of the economic side. If this were to be true, that they're really hurting financially and they've absolutely got to have the financial aspect, to me, that's Trump's greatest leveraging point.
He needs to start flexing that.
Absolutely.
That's my point. He needs to start flexing that. He needs to say, okay, you just sent a rocket into energy infrastructure in Ukraine. No. 40% tariffs. Boom.
That hurts.
He needs to start doing that. He needs to start ratcheting it up. And I think that I think Zelensky did need to come to the table. I think if Zelensky had been more of a team player on this, Trump would not have treated him the way that he did.
I would agree with that.
I think that Zelensky was very entitled, and he thought he could play the heartstrings of America
Yes.
against Trump and against Putin, and it just didn't work. Trump does not like that. Trump is very much a personality guy.
Mm-hmm.
He likes to negotiate on personality, and Zelensky is acting as though he's going to walk in and get everything after he's lost everything.
Yeah. In one of the documentaries that I was listening to, this was back a couple of years when they were working with Ukraine in the war. And a gentleman from the UK said he went over there and he said for the first 45 minutes, all Zelensky did, he goes, you thought I was Amazon. He just made a list of all the things he wanted. Mm-hmm. And he finally had to say, hey, just stop. I'm not Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so he does the entitlement.
Yeah.
You have to help us. Now, let's go back to the Bidens.
Well, hold on there, though. That's a really interesting point. Because if you're bringing in your Amazon list, what am I going to give back? I'm going to give my Amazon
your receipt.
list.
Your receipt. Here's your receipt, Zelensky. $350 billion.
That's a big receipt.
Give us access to your rare,
There you go.
rare minerals. And
There
that's
you
what Trump's
go.
doing. Saying this should have been done from the get-go. But anyway, yeah, you need to provide
Yeah.
here's the cost. Here's the bill.
Well, and you know, we need to go back to the Obama presidency.
Yes.
When the Bidens were hooking in with Ukraine, what was going on?
Well, son of a gun. They
Yes.
called the prosecutor off.
Oh, and he got fired. But it's so interesting because then was not Biden calling for them to let Ukraine into NATO?
Which was against the treaty,
Which-
by the way.
But, you know, when you're taking millions of dollars out of Ukraine to put in your pocket is what it sounded like.
Yep.
I don't have, you know, from the
Well,
news
it was safe for
stories.
the big guy.
Yes. I mean, they had Hunter on a board.
It's like $10 million or something.
It was ridiculous. And he had no experience, but they put him on a board. And, of course, they spent a lot of time in Ukraine. So there was a woman from Ukraine that lives in New York City now, and she was interviewed. And she said this goes back to the Bidens. This
Yeah.
is why we are in this situation. It goes back to the Bidens.
I think your point about going back to Obama is probably better made. And I wouldn't even rule this out, but there's no news of this, but it's amazing to me how much our previous presidents have engaged in activity that has really
treasonous.
Yes.
It's treasonous.
Yes.
It's just bad behavior.
And that's why it matters who we vote for.
It matters who we vote for. I had a friend one time. I said, "Hey, I'm not going to use this name." I said, I think it is an issue that you have at the time. What's the fake Latino's name? Beto. I think it's an issue that you have Beto trying to unseat Ted Cruz here in Texas. And he goes, "Well, it's okay because at the end of the day, they'll just vote him out if he's bad, and we'll get someone else in there who's better." I mean, I want to try a change. Ted Cruz has been there for a long time, and I don't like Ted Cruz because XYZ had his list of media talking points that have been handed to him. And I said, we're one vote away from the Republic falling.
Yes.
We're one vote away. One bad vote. And so you're seeing this because you have to enforce treaties. You have to enforce the rules. When we tell Russia, okay, you can leave the Ukraine alone and let it become Ukraine, if we disarm their nukes, they don't become part of NATO, and we don't involve ourselves in your territory, we don't build bioweapons labs. Thank you, Victoria Nuland, for letting us know that we actually were building biochem labs in Ukraine.
I was making fun of you, sorry.
You're making fun of me? If you're going to make fun of me, Mr. Producer, and my dry mouth.
You said biochem labs. I'm sorry.
Labs. Yes, I did. Sorry. Thank you. If you're going to make fun of me, be a man about it and speak well into the mic. Deep-throated. Go ahead.
Next time I will.
Thank you. Okay. So,
Thank you, Ryan.
anyway,
Sorry.
biochem labs. Okay. So we violated the treaty. Of course they're gonna eventually say, wait a minute, we're gonna go ahead and take what we think is ours anyway, Crimea. And Obama's presidency allowed that. So now we're in this position where we have allowed that treaty to go. I do disagree with you though. Ukraine's not lost. There is an opportunity. We either have to put everything on the table and go full scale to war with a nuclear power.
Who's going to do that?
Or we've already lost. And so you have to make a decision. All these European NATO allies and the war hawks want to do this proxy war with the Ukraine. And they want, it's this very Machiavellian thing where we'll just pay. What was it, Graham or who was it who said, we're basically just going to pay for a war with Russia and use up Ukrainian lives.
We're going to have
It's this very Machiavellian thing.
A proxy nuclear war with Russia, right?
War with the nuclear power. Yeah, it's not a good idea.
No, not a good
No,
idea.
and Ukraine is very vital. It is an important piece of land.
It's a linchpin.
Because of the surrounding countries next to Ukraine. Do you?
Yes, it is.
Yes, but
it is the main. That and Poland are the two main ingresses to Europe.
But what's the key about Ukraine that really makes
Natural resources.
That's it. That's exactly right. It is the.
And
this
they've
is my
already taken.
opinion.
And they've already taken a lot of that land.
And that's the troubling part.
The Donbass
Yes.
region, they've
Yes.
already taken it. They've already taken the sea access to Crimea.
Yep.
So what Trump's trying to do right now is say, you give back a little bit of that land here. We're going to develop on the Russian side, and we're going to develop on the Ukraine side as the U.S. Both benefit. We reduce sanctions on Russia. Russia's economy can start to bloom. Ukraine's economy can bloom. And U.S. is right in the middle. This only works, though, if both sides want it, and it only works if we enforce it. And that's why a strong, muscular America is the only response to world peace. Or
And
the only
I
answer.
don't think either one of them really want it.
No, they don't.
If they agree to it, it's going to because they need to stop fighting because they don't have enough more men to keep fighting.
To me, it would seem like you would think, okay, here's Zelensky. He's the president of Ukraine, and you've got Russia that wants natural resources. You got United States that wants their natural resources. They've got companies. United States got companies. Hey, look here. let's bring in companies from Russia. Let's bring in companies from the United States. Let's let them come in and do some work and do some development. And let's do like other countries in the
But
world.
who's going to control the income?
Yeah, and so it's going to be both sides. It's going to be both
But
sides that benefit
and
from
that's
it.
the thing. Ukraine is a corrupt country, of course, and we all know that, and they always have been. But you've got companies that have to control what they do, but what Ukraine does with their own money, that's their own problem.
Well,
It's a corrupt country.
yeah.
Well,
So,
Russia's
I
too.
mean,
Just to-
if Zelensky's, if that country, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So and just to actually answer some comments in the comment section real quick. Someone actually, Dearman, thank you. Direct quote from Lindsey Graham: "The best money we've ever spent, Lindsey Graham, on U.S. Ukraine funding." Someone else says, and they misspelled Donbass. It's Donbas, not Dumbass. But region was at the heart of the issue. Now they don't talk about it very much.
I think there was
When we
probably
first
a
started-
reason that was spelled that way.
Yeah, I think there was too, but I was ignoring
But
it. Anyway,
yeah.
so the Donbass region was at the heart, but now it was the original annexation, is what Russia claimed, and they've moved the lines through much of that. And so it's the Donbass was the stated desire and goal. So all of that to say, we're at this point right now where Russia's already kind of achieved their goals.
Yes.
Trump's trying to insert himself. We just have to make sure that if we do this, we're as wise as serpents here and innocent as doves. We need to make sure that we are walking that line. Someone says midterms are 19 months out. That could be very good or very bad.
That's an interesting point right there.
Yeah.
We need to be fighting as hard as possible in the culture, in our churches, in our families. Yes, the weird blue-haired relative. You need to be winsome with them, and I'm not talking about kissing someone's posterior. I'm saying you need to be trying to win them. You need to be trying to win them over to Jesus Christ, to Western principles, all of the above, because we're having a pendulum swing. And again, this isn't really the topic for the day, but we're looking at Bernie Sanders and AOC making love to each other on stage pretty much. That's scary if the Bernie Sanders contingent gets behind AOC. They had a 15,000 person rally in Arizona just this last month. Mm-hmm. That is concerning because those people are real Marxists. They're not.
Yeah.
They are Russo-Chinese Marxists, right? USSR type Marxists. He honeymooned there. You do not want to see that kind of Marxism in the United States. The class and gender Marxism is laughable enough that we can kind of get past it. The other stuff, class warfare, has toppled many, many nations, and we don't want to see the pendulum swing over to them.
I will add on one more thing to what that listener had put in there. Yes, the midterms are important. I think something that is, and some have talked about, but not a lot, this election for the Wisconsin Supreme Court is
A big deal.
way up at the top of the totem pole. And that election is going to be very pivotal up to the midterms.
And the reason being is because they're going to redraw the lines, they can eliminate a couple of House seats.
Gerrymandering. And both sides do it, by the way. Don't
Yes.
pretend that it's not the case. Guess what? I want a gerrymander too. Yeah, because they already gerrymandered. Meh. Someone's going to do it. Might as well be me. I'm sorry. No apologies. I don't care anymore. So, speaking about things that I don't care about anymore, Signalgate.
Oh.
Okay.
Talking about things you don't care about.
Signalgate. Let's talk about it. Is it a big boogaloo? Is it not? Is it a problem? Was it a mistake? Okay. Let's go ahead and go through it real quick for those who have been living in a hole and are not familiar. What is Signalgate? Well, so I'll just read the chat here. Mr. Producer, go ahead and pull this up. And next cut. This is Houthi PC small group. Mike Walls Team establishing the principal group for coordination on Houthis, particularly over the next 72 hours. My deputy, Alex Wong, that'll be an important player later, is pulling together a tiger team at deputies/agency chief of staff level, following up from the meeting in the sit room this morning for action items, and will be sending that out later this evening. Mike Wallace, please provide the best staff POC from your team for us to coordinate with over the next couple of days and over the weekend. Thanks. Okay. So everyone signing in, except someone, thank you, Mr. Producer, did not sign in, and added by, it looks like Alex Wong, you have a reporter at The Atlantic. Mm-hmm. So, Miss Nicki, I don't know if you want to speak about that real quick.
Well, first off, I think it's important to understand is the administrator of this thread is Mike Waltz. And that's important is because everybody wants to point their finger at Pete Hegseth, and he's not the administrator of the thread. So
he is Secretary of Defense, though, and everything that he says.
I was going to say
is at his disposal.
I understand.
He shared messages that are the crux of their argument.
I do understand.
But keep going.
So, and Alex Wong, who my understanding is that he has been suspended from his job over this.
I hope so.
I'm not quite sure why a person in the Trump administration would have the phone number of a Trump-hating journalist. Sounds to me very dangerous. Sounds to me controversial. Is that the way I want to see that?
Mm-hmm.
So in that regards, also, if you go and you listen to Charlie Kirk on this this topic, he will tell you that Alex Wong's wife has ties into the Democratic Party, and I think goes back to the Obama. Go listen to it. I believe that's what he said, but listen to it for yourself to make sure that's what he said.
Give me the link, and we'll put it in the description. Further every day.
You know what?
Rumble.
Yeah, it's a Charlie Kirk show, and it was on the
recent interview.
Yes.
So, Mr. Producer, go ahead and pull up the next one. The most interesting part of this was, I believe, the interplay between everyone here. JD Vance, team, I'm out for a day going on an economic event in Michigan, but I think we are making a mistake, says JD Vance. 3% of U.S. trades run through the Suez. 40% of European trade does. There is a real risk that the public doesn't understand this or why it's necessary. The strongest reason to do this is, as POTUS said, to send a message. I'm not sure that the president is aware how inconsistent this is with this message on Europe right now. There's a further risk that we see a moderate to severe spike in oil prices. I am willing to support the consensus of the team and keep these concerns to myself, but there's a strong argument for delaying this a month and doing messaging work on why this matters, seeing where the economy is, etc. So
he wants to shore up messaging.
Yeah, he wants to make sure that Europe gets the idea. And so you start to see a mild, I won't call it a break, some people call it a break in the ranks, but a difference in opinion on how to carry out the peace through strength messaging, as well as the country by country responsibility for their own defense and for the defense of their economy. Because obviously the Houthis are creating a problem in the Suez Canal, which if you are familiar, most of you are, that is one of the main waterways for oil. And as J.D. Vance just said, America's interest 3% come through there. However, 40% of Europe's come through the Suez. So the Houthis should be the responsibility of the Europeans, says J.D. Vance. This is the part that I find that's interesting. This is the part that I think is really interesting because I see J.D. Vance as a potential candidate. Miss Nicki and I disagreed about this before we got on. I kind of see Pete Hegseth as a potential candidate, maybe in the future.
And I thought that he had too much baggage to be a candidate.
And maybe he does.
J.D. Vance, I think, would be an excellent. I like Pete Hegseth. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I've listened to an interview with him before. I think he's a great person and is going to do a great job. J.D. Vance is a great person. I think he's a great communicator, and he doesn't have the same kind of baggage that Pete Hegseth has.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his concerns on that chat were legit concerns.
I do too. And I loved his attitude. I'll support it if you guys feel like we absolutely need to. And also, for anybody that wants to say there's a break in the ranks, no, there's not.
They have a
No.
legitimate disagreement on
Absolutely.
policy, and they're having an adult conversation.
And Trump is not opposed to that. What he's opposed to is that being public.
And now,
Yes.
and now it
Now
kind
it
of is because of. And someone dropped it in the chat. It's not Waltz. It's Wong. It was very Wong of him. Anyway, next cut. I'm sorry. We got to
love
move
it.
on from that, Mr. Producer. Save me.
I love it.
Joe Kent. There is nothing time sensitive driving the timeline. Will have the exact same options in a month. So John Ratcliffe says something that they did indeed redact. P. Hicks says, VP, I fully. I understand your concerns and fully support you bringing it up with POTUS. Important considerations, most of which are tough to know how they play out. Economy, Ukraine peace, Gaza, etc. I think messaging is going to be tough no matter what. Nobody knows who the Houthis are, which is why we would need to stay focused on A, 1, Biden failed, and 2, Iran funded. Waiting a few weeks or a month does not fundamentally change the calculus to immediate risks on waiting. 1, this leaks and we look indecisive. 2, Israel takes action first. I love that. Or Gaza ceasefire falls apart and we don't get to start this on our own terms. We can manage both. We are prepared to execute. And if we had final go, or if I had final go or no go vote, I believe we should. This is not about the Houthis. I see it as two things. Number 1, restoring freedom of navigation, a core national interest. And number 2, reestablish deterrence, which Biden cratered. But we can easily pause. And if we do, I will do all we can to enforce 100% Operation Security. I welcome any other thoughts.
I love that dialogue. I really like the dialogue just because whether we agree with it or not, the issue is they're being given the freedom to voice their thoughts and make the best decision. And at the end of the day, that is exactly what you want.
You want somebody on your team that does not mirror all your thoughts. You need somebody on your team that's going to challenge you in the right way. And like my mother said, there are friends who give you constructive criticism to help you be a better person. And then there are friends who criticize you just because they're being mean.
Correct. And so I'm hoping that we really do have a good contingent here. It looks like it. Now, Michael Waltz, the source of the leak, or rather Alex Wong, but underneath Michael Waltz says this: whether it's now or in several weeks from now, it will have to be the United States that reopens these shipping lanes. Per the president's request, we are working with DOD and state to determine how to compile costs associated and levy them on the Europeans. I love that.
Yep.
JD Vance at Pete XF. If you think we should do it, let's just go. I just hate bailing Europe out again. Let's just make sure our message is tight here. And if there are things we can do up front to minimize the risk of Saudi oil facilities, then we should do it. P. Hegseth, VP, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. I just like these guys more after reading this.
It's really cool.
Reloading.
It's pathetic. And Mike is correct. We are the only ones on the planet on our side of the ledger who can do this. Nobody else is even close. Timing. The question is timing. I feel like now is as good as time as any. Given POTUS directive to reopen shipping lanes, I think we should go, but POTUS still retains 24 hours of decision space. Okay. I think that crew is who I want running this.
Amen.
What I see, and by the way, Signal, government approved. We heard it in the hearings. It is government approved. It is loaded on the laptops. 4 things that you would hear in these situations. Now, I had a busy work week. I had a lot of stuff I wanted to pump into the show map, and I just ran out of time. One of the interviews that I was watching with a correspondent with Fox Live Now, he came out and said, look, this is what you would hear in the Pentagon outside of a skiff. So if Signal is approved for that sort of usage, that sort of sensitive content, but not top secret, which this is all still in the not top secret
Right.
category. Up to this point, there's a little bit of a gray area coming up. Then there's nothing wrong with this. The question is how it was leaked. Now, everyone, Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, Michael Waltz, sloppy that you're not verifying who is on the chat. That is a failure.
Yes.
Period. This looks really bad. But so far, nothing illegal's happened. And we'll get to the point where, in a moment, as you said, is illegal.
I'll be honest with you, too. It just kind of going to the 40,000 foot level on this thing. I'm one of those that happens to believe this might be a blessing in disguise.
In a way.
I really do.
I think
and the reason being is because when you look at what Trump has tried to do from the very get-go, and that is be transparent, did they really discuss anything wrong there? No. As a matter of fact, you got the opportunity to look at something that actually makes me a stronger supporter of his cabinet than what I was before. And that's not bad. You know, I mean, the Democrats don't like it, but the Democrats don't like Trump. So what does it matter? So I think, if anything, this really, I know Jeffrey Goldberg might have had some self-centered, motivation behind this. He might have done America a bigger favor.
Yeah.
This might bite him.
I think that this was ultimately a great thing.
Yeah.
What's interesting about the chat is that you can read this and see that what they talk about publicly is still the same thing they talk about in the chat.
They're real people.
There's no different.
They're real people. These aren't fake politicians.
Right.
Next slide, number 21, Mr. Producer. Team update from Pete Hegseth. Okay, this part is blurred out by the Atlantic because I did feel like it was too sensitive. JD Vance, I will say a prayer for victory. Next one, 22, Mr. Producer. So this is after everything drops. A good start. Everyone is sending emojis. Kudos to all, most particularly those in the theater and Centcom. Really good, really great. God bless. Great work and effects. Okay, here's the part that everyone's bothered about. Cut 23. This is one of the things that Pete Hegseth signaled that was a problem, quote unquote. Team update. Time now, 1:44 ET. Weather is favorable. Just confirm with CENTCOM and we are go for a mission. 12:15 ET. F-18's launch. First strike package. 3:45. Trigger-based F-18 first strike window starts. Target terrorist is at his known location and should be on time. This is the problem. And also, strike drones launch MQ-9s. 14:10. More F-18s launch. Second strike package. 14:15. Strike drones on target. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop, pending earlier trigger-based targets. 15:36. F-18 second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launched. So you've got a couple things going on. Thank you, Mr. Producer. You got a couple things going on here. You have our methods and individuals and people on the ground being exposed. Well, obviously you have pilots. There's a question mark there. Now, Pete Hegseth says no war plans have been, and he's right, no war plans have been disseminated. The public, though, is going to hear this and they're going to say, the target terrorist is at his known location. How do you know that? Well, there are three ways that you would know that. Overhead surveillance, satellite, MQ-9 Reaper, some sort of drone, right? Okay. So number two, you have some sort of operational force on the ground, or you have an operative in theater, like a CIA asset. Then number three, you have some sort of conversation that was had, or you have some sort of cell phone telemetry. Okay. Numbers 1 and 2 put pilots or equipment or operatives in theater in danger. Don't know what exactly it was. Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of Defense. He can declassify anything he wants. He should not declassify anything and everything that he wants, and he would say that as well. I think Pete Hegseth should have come out and said early on, there was a leak. We have a problem. We are looking into it, and we will remedy it, and this will never happen again.
And then stop talking about it. That's what they said.
Correct.
Stop talking about it.
Correct. Waltz should have come out and said, we had a leak. We have a problem. We are getting to the bottom of it, and this will never happen again. I guarantee you. Instead of that, we had 3 days of them tap dancing around the issue while we get an executive order from the president, a gift for people like us in this room who have spent hours poll watching or working polls, a gift that we're going to start to fix our elections here in America. We could have been talking about that, but instead we were talking about this horse rubbish. It is absolutely insane to me that we are talking about this when we could have been talking about our elections getting fixed, which is a much more important issue.
There's more to that, because Afghanistan, do not even come to me
and tell us
about
that it's worse.
That's right. This
Susan
was
Rice, Benghazi Susan Rice.
Oh my.
This is the worst slip up in
oh my goodness,
national security history.
Yeah, right.
Benghazi Susan Rice. You want to speak to me, lady?
Yeah, I mean, Afghanistan
that's a
people,
case for treason there. That's approaching it.
And one of the things Trump kept saying, this was a successful mission. The mission, yes, can't have this ever happen again. We gotta get rid of the people who are prone to do these kind of things.
Yeah.
And I hope Trump comes hard and heavy from learning from his first term. Get rid of the people who leak this information.
Well, that's why I think that what he said with regards to lesson learned, that sounded very simple for us.
Uh-huh.
I guarantee you, in the room, it was a whole lot more stern.
And I think it goes to Trump's character, because he's giving them a pass.
Yeah.
He's giving them a pass.
And no, I don't think any of these people should be fired. I don't.
Yeah.
But I do think, so someone said it in the comment section here, they dropped, why is no one, this is Dynamax, why is no one talking about National Security Deputy Director Alex Wong and his wife Candace? We did earlier, and I agree with you. Why is no one talking about our Democrat operative wife of Alex Wong, who set up the chat for Mike Waltz?
Well,
that's what we should be talking about.
Yeah.
Because and for someone in the comments says Monday morning quarterbacking. No, we're not Monday morning quarterbacking. We're saying these are the standards that we need to hold to. And now that we see that there is a correct connection to the Democratic Party, there should be a discussion about treason, because that is crazy that you would leak to a reporter during an operation. You know, and I don't like the guy whose name I won't mention over at the Atlantic. Suckers and morons, or whatever what libel he had with Trump. I don't like those people. At least he didn't leak it during the operation. If the guy had any character, he would have said, "Is this a prank? I feel like I'm on the wrong call. I don't think I should be here. Bye," and he should have exited.
I would have.
He could have. That's what any normal, reasonable, good person would have done. However, the fact that it happened, there's a leak. And I don't think it's an accident. I don't buy that it's an accident. There's something else going on.
I don't buy that was an accident. My problem is you're working in the Trump administration and you have this guy's phone number in your phone.
That's nuts.
Yeah, there's something about that stinks all over the place. And by the way, if you work in business, sometimes your email gets on. I've been emailed by a customer, and I will send back, "Did you really want me on this?" Because you can tell it's something internal.
Correct.
And they just accidentally put in my email. I let them know right away, did you really intend for me to be on this, so that they can
have some integrity?
Yes.
And so, no, we're not Monday morning quarterbacking, but we are saying, look, Hegseth, guys, we love you. This chat just tells us how much more we love you. Watch your back. Watch what you're doing, because you are under attack from the inside. You have to be better. You guys are the dream team, but you also have to not fall into this. Do everything you can. Everything you can. You've got to be smarter than the smarties and tougher than the toughies when you're working at this level.
You know, you just used a really interesting phrase there, the dream team. And I was just thinking a moment ago, Biden probably had the quote unquote dream team on a Democratic level.
Yeah, they were dreaming all the time.
And it showed in the policies being implemented in the U.S. If you think about what Trump has put together, it truly is a dream team on the Republican side. Name me a cabinet that has worked as cohesively as this group.
And they're doing a great job. They're under attack.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
that Reagan could, and I love Reagan. I'm not sure Reagan's cabinet would have come to this level. And I think that's saying something.
Well, you have to understand what this cabinet is up against.
Mm-hmm.
And
A lot of evil.
it is, and a lot of deep state.
Internal
Yes.
warfare within our government.
Right.
The criminal element
Yep.
is balking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
They
Yes.
don't like this.
Everybody who carries the title Republican is not your friend.
No.
You got to
Oh, boy,
understand
what a
that.
point.
It's not your
What a
friend,
point.
and not aiming for the same thing that you are aiming for.
So I don't know how that leak happened, but I'd really like to know who it was. I don't buy that it was an accident. The moment we all heard that, we said, no.
That group would not do that.
No, that's not an accident, but they also need to be watching their backs. They need to be watching their backs.
Yes.
I know that they're fighting a war, a literal war. They also need to be leery. They need to take the extra minute because people are after them and we value them and we want them to win. We want them to crush it because they've been doing it so far. They've been doing awesome. So this is not a bashing session. This is hey, someone's after. The game is still afoot. The deep state is still doing their thing. So just a bit of a switch up. And then after we're gonna talk about the issue of loneliness. And then after that, stay around because we're gonna talk about Vivek's idea of who Americans are. But before we get to that, I wanted to break this up and show a segment about Americans' time spent. Where do Americans spend their time? And this comes from Planet of Memes. I saw this on X, and I wanted to share it because it's fascinating. Mm-hmm. Watch as it changes.
Where they do what now?
Where they spend their time.
Spend their time.
No, that's the wrong one, Mr. Producer. Help me out. So this is from 1930. You can turn that down on the slider there, bud. So you see friends and family are at the top. At family, you're watching family decrease. Church is now at the bottom. And again, we're looking at through the 70s, right? You'll see over time, friends were the increase, family goes to the bottom. Now, this is where it gets interesting to me. As soon as the online starts, from its inception, it starts to take over at a rapid pace. And you're looking more towards, again, in the 90s. We're still, and we're speeding forward to the 2000s. It's crazy.
That's one of the greatest slides ever created.
What gets me is the reduction in the church
and family.
And family.
Family.
It's amazing.
So what are you doing when you're online?
Right.
Typically, you're self-actualizing. And I'm not
Great
just
word.
And I'm not just speaking about corn and naughty websites, but I'm speaking about, and there's a lot of time spent there, by the way. Multi-billion dollar industry, half the internet is dedicated to that. That aside, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about doom scrolling on your phone.
Yeah.
I'm talking about shopping. I'm talking about figuring out where you're going to eat and agonizing over where you're going to eat at night, and you're eating your appetite. Games.
Man.
All of it. It's spent online, away from family, away from friends. By the way, watch the depression line. And I don't have that handy for this one, but it does follow the same trajectory.
What about the effects of blue light on small children?
Yeah.
Spending too much time
There's a technological
looking
aspect
at
to that.
the screens and how parents use them as babysitters and the effects it has on little kids.
Yep.
I mean, the effect that
online-
it has on little kids is amazing on their brain development.
Yeah.
So
and
radio, TV, and online have done that. By the way, also they found out in the 50s and 60s they did fluorescent light tests as soon as fluorescent lights got introduced into the classroom. about 10 years, 5 years, 10 years into that, they started doing fluorescent light tests, and they found that children who had attention issues became more relaxed and became top performers when you put incandescent bulbs back into the classroom.
Interesting.
So the 60 cycle lights and 120 cycle lights that we have are not good for you either. The screen is not good for you. So that's a health benefit. But I would want to say that the more we focus on ourselves, the more depressed you become.
I can see
And the
that.
more you focus on your purpose outside of yourself, the more fulfilled you become.
I would agree. And also the online thing is you're looking at other people's lives. And remember, when people are online taking their photos of themselves, that's not the full reality of it. And young women especially get on there and they see these pretty girls and they see how skinny they are or how pretty they are, and they're taking pictures that make them look popular, and and then they come away with insecurity issues. But online has already been traced to Great Depression. And what are we doing with it? How are we going to approach it? And family is so important. You used to get your basis for life through your family, and now you're getting it through online, which is a false reality.
Your purpose.
Yes.
Purpose used to come through people and through God and your church and your family, and now it's yourself.
I'm always amazed at when, and I've stopped doing this. I've pretty much don't even get on Facebook anymore. I just don't even care for it anymore. It's just gotten ridiculous. But when I used to get on, I was like amazed by these people that are like,
Yeah, I know.
me, their pictures of them
Narcissism.
and 3 other, or them and their drink of alcohol, or
For those
them
on
and
audio,
their supper,
he's selfieing.
or whatever, a selfie of
Yeah.
whatever,
Steve's a
wherever
very
they're
visual speaker.
at,
But Steve,
something.
we were raised in a time where you didn't do things like that.
It
You
was
didn't draw attention to yourself. You didn't
shameful.
take pictures of yourself and we just didn't do that growing up, because that would have been considered that you're conceited. It was a
Correct.
wrong, inappropriate behavior.
Correct. And it's a different time. So I just think that it's important to know that you get your purpose from your family and from God. And when you do that, you really have a better
Excuse me,
outlook
Charlie,
on life.
I just need to get a picture of us here. A good little picture of us.
Thank you.
Go ahead and get that picture, Steve.
There we go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, back to my nice segue into where you get your purpose and value, and how that correlates really well, where I think we've really lost what it means to be an American. And I think the Conservative Party has largely lost what it means to be an American. And that's because we have taken this secular approach. So moving into that, I think that it would be good for us to look at Vivek Ramaswamy. And he did an appearance on the Will Cain show recently, this last week. And I think it was enlightening because I really like Vivek Ramaswamy. In fact, I almost voted for him in the primary over Trump. I thought Trump really needed to win, and I thought he was the one to win. So I voted for Trump. And I like his policies, and I think ultimately Trump's a better candidate. However, I like Vivek Ramaswamy. However, this interview was revealing in a very bad way for me in light of Ramaswamy. So go ahead and pull that up. It's going to be cut 24, Mr. Producer. 25. Excuse me. I was wrong. You were right.
National identity. What does it mean then to be an American?
This is the question of our time. And we're a geographically expansive country with people of diverse religious backgrounds and ethnicities. I think it's worth occasionally stepping back and honestly asking the question, is there actually something that binds us together across these diverse attributes? Do we actually believe that exists? I actually do. I think it is an ethos, a creed that was codified in the Declaration of Independence, actualized in the U.S. Constitution. But it's not just the formalities of history. Even in today, the basic idea that no matter who you are, or where your parents came from, or what your skin color is, that you get ahead in this country with your own hard work and commitment and dedication, and that you're free to speak your mind at every step of the way. A nation that recognizes that every one of us has our own unique God-given gift, and that it's different and distinct from every other person in the world, but that we are the nation on God's green earth where you get to realize the maximum of those God-given gifts without anybody, not a government, not a bureaucracy standing in your way. That's the set of ideals that makes America itself. And that's different than pretty much every nation in human history. And I think that that's a beautiful thing, and there's some controversial layers to that if we're able to go beneath the layers of what makes America different.
I don't agree. And I don't agree with him on this level. It's a categorization error that Vivek Ramaswamy just made. Most of what he said is true. In fact, I'd say 99% of it is nail on the head. But it's not what makes America great. Those are things about America that are great. But it's not what makes America great. He's saying that the fact that you have freedom of choice, the fact that you have the ability to do these things, you have this right to excel, that is the essence of America. No, I disagree. That is that is the light from the light source, but it is not the source of those freedoms. Those freedoms are good things, but freedoms for freedom's sake without purpose are hollow. Look at the French Revolution to understand why that is the case. This is a very Burkean idea, Edmund Burke and the Enlightenment. And if you don't watch yourself, you will conserve enlightened principles that are divorced and devoid of any real purpose. It is very shallow. What, Vivek Ramaswamy, what induces Americans to allow that freedom? Why does that freedom for those good things exist? I want to play the next clip, and then I want to get y'all's thoughts because we'll go a little bit further.
Is America, is our identity exclusively centered around this idea of a creed? You know, Joe Biden used to often say that America is an idea. And for me, there are ideas behind America. But a creed and idea are abstract and can be redefined at any given time. And that takes us back to what is the identity of America. And I believe there are this is a people, and this is a place, and there is a culture that binds us that has to be fought for, to your point. But that culture is rooted in our history. It's rooted in our story. And that culture has to be more than just hard work and more than just a creed, that we have to understand the culture we're all a part of here. Is America, is our identity exclusively centered around this idea of a creed?
So what is that culture?
Will Cain is again wrong. And you just asked the right question. What culture did build America? Let me spoil it for you. The Protestant work ethic.
Oh, what? Oh,
Say
what?
Again. What was that?
I'm sorry?
The Protestant work ethic.
Oh,
you know the idea of conservative Christianity. You work for what you eat. You have to provide for your family. You have to provide for the poor out of your own pocket. You have to provide. Where do these things come from? These are not the good either that I'm speaking to. The Protestant work ethic is not the creed that makes America great.
No.
What makes America great?
It's God.
Exactly.
Well, and if you go back to the history of when they came over here, remember only the lords in England could own land. You were in there wasn't a middle class. There was the poor, and there were the lords of the lands at that time. And people wanted to make their own living. They wanted to work their own land, to have their own property. And the civil rights movement, it was about black people saying, I don't have the same opportunity. I want that opportunity. They were never looking for a handout. They were looking for the right to have the same opportunities, the same education as everybody else. And they were exactly right to want that and entitled to it.
So just bear with us for just a minute, because I promise, if this sounds strange, if this sounds confusing, if it sounds like I'm picking at the wind, I promise this is what you do in philosophy. You start to pick and you ask the why questions until you get down to the substance, the basic substance. Let's see where Ramaswamy goes, because I humbly suggest, far be it from me to disagree with Ramaswamy, but I humbly suggest that he's wrong. But he does go to articulate a little bit more, and you start to see some intellectual inconsistencies here. I like him as a candidate, but I do think he could improve. Mr. Producer, go ahead.
Yes,
America,
is
what makes
America
America
is our
distinctive
identity
versus other countries
exclusively
around the
centered
world?
around this
Pause that.
idea
Is that
of
we're
creed.
still
I'm
bound
not
to
sure what's going on there, but he goes on to say what makes America great is its exceptionalism in education. It's exceptionalism in its ethic. And then he goes on a little bit later on to say, China, they have better test scores than us. Wait a minute. China having better test scores than us, does that mean that they're America? You just said exceptionalism in education, but they're obviously not America. Why? Because they keep your money from you. They take. They don't allow for freedom of speech. They don't allow from these things, but they have exceptionalism.
They don't
And
allow
they
you to
don't
worship
have God.
They don't allow you to worship God.
Exactly.
So that's why I really want to say you got to be careful when you come down to it. The creed of America, if you really want to get down to it, is all men need to be free to worship God, and they need to be free to pursue those things. If you are focused on that, you're going to start to see, and it's not just God in this miasma of there's a higher power. I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it. Look at the Hindus, and the Hindu religion has not done India any favors. If you're a Hindu and you're listening, I love you. God bless you. I have Hindu friends. I have Muslim friends and family. I love you all. Your religion did not build the West.
No.
And India is still suffering under the weight of a caste system that casts people down into poverty and suffering. America is the product of a set of ideas. It's a one of a kind system. And the only reason it works is because the men who founded it sat down and says, what are the principles of God? What are the things that God wants from us? God allows us free will. God allows us to do X, Y, and Z. How do we implement a country where ambition counters ambition and in the government, and it allows, while these two factions within the government, these special interests are fighting, man can live within his free will in safety, prosperity, and have the opportunity to go forward. You don't get that without God. And I'm so happy to have Tulsi Gabbard in the Republican aisle. I'm so happy to have Vivek Ramaswamy. I am so happy to have these people. Guess what we cannot lose in the next 4 years? America's identity as a Christian nation. We've lost the way a long time ago. We need to make sure that we reclaim that and say, this is a Christian nation founded on Christ-like principles. This is why it worked. And the further you get away from it, the worse it is. Steve.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Steve's been dying over here.
That's what's interesting. The thing you just said right there. Not only are we able to worship God, but the foundation of this country was based on a Christian foundation. Our Constitution
Is based, yeah.
is based on that. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at what we have gone over the past how many weeks since we've started with PSB? And you can see through what we've done over the past number of weeks, the reference that God has been in everything that these people have talked about.
30-something% of all quotations that were made or references that were made at the Constitutional Convention were out of the Bible. The next nearest single source was Black's Law. at 3% of all references made at the Constitutional Convention. These men were learned men. They weren't Bible thumpers, but they sure quoted the Bible.
They knew it.
They knew it.
And you know, I think some of the most chilling words that we've heard since 2000 is when Obama proudly proclaimed America is no longer a Christian nation.
Sad.
It was
Yep.
one of the saddest moments. And that to me was just, it was a work of Satan. I'm not calling Obama Satan. What I am saying is Satan used him to communicate something. And it was chilling. It was very sad to see. Here's the other thing, and I think Steve brings up an excellent point on this issue of being founded on Christian principles. Folks, if you really want to understand the deep connection with these men and God, you really could take a look at a lot of the older documents and just look at the quotes, and it oozes out. Let me be clear about something, though. No, not all of the men were Christian men.
Right.
And you will not hear anybody on this podcast say that because we know better. The thing is that when you take the totality of the group, there is no doubt where those men looked.
There wasn't a single agnostic, though. All of them were
and-
deists who
Yep.
respected or loved the
Yep.
Bible.
So you can come back at this and you can say America was not founded on Christian principles, blah, blah, blah. No, America was. As a matter of fact, was it Jefferson that said, this document is not written for an immoral people?
Correct. By moral, they meant Christian.
That's right.
Because John Jay literally said, if you elect, Jews or Mohammedans, you could have a somewhat of a workable system, but after a while, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And John Jay laid that out at the Constitutional Convention. It was a serious concern of theirs.
And I think we might be having a problem up there in Minnesota and Michigan.
Well, we definitely are.
Yeah.
But onto the problem that we have in the show map, DOGE. DOGE is solving a problem. And there's been this big boogeyman.
Don't you know it?
Don't you know it?
Don't.
That hurt. So DOGE, Alfred Hitchcock, I believe it was, said at some point you have to show the monster. And they showed the boogeyman of DOGE. It's actually a bunch of white dudes who look kind of unassuming. I actually like it. Let's play the first bit. Because time. I love this. You're first.
Okay.
Mr. Producer, go ahead and get me the next cut, please.
Okay.
Get me DOGE.
That we've gone too much
That's
to a
the wrong one. Next
participation.
one.
Oh,
Next one.
The ways that the government is defrauded is that the computer systems don't talk to each other.
This is what
So
DOGE is doing.
If computer systems don't talk to each other, then you can exploit that gap, and fraudsters exploit that gap, take advantage. For example, there were over $300 million of small business administration loans that has been given out to people under the age of 11.
Well, actually, to add to it, it's $300 million under the age of 11 and over $300 million to over the age of 120.
Definitely.
Small business loans, correct?
Yes. The oldest American is 114. So it's safe to say if their age is 115 or above, they're fake. Or they should be in the Guinness Book of World Records. And we should not be giving out loans to babies. So the youngest recipient of a Small Business Administration loan is a 9-month-old, which is a very, very precocious baby we're talking about here. So obviously it was just fraudulent. And they do terrible things. They actually will see that a kid's been born. They will steal that kid's social security number and then take out a loan and leave that kid with a bad credit rating. There was literally a baby. The terrible things are being done is what we're saying.
And how?
And we're stopping these terrible things.
And you can stop it? I mean,
we are stopping
You are
it.
stopping it.
The reason this is
Absolutely.
happening is because the two systems are not talking to each other.
Yes.
Right. And so You don't know at the Small Business Administration that you're giving a loan to a 9-month-old, which happened in one case, because you're not cross-referencing that with the Social Security Administration data that has birth dates. So that very, very simple fix eliminates tremendous fraud. And that there are multiple systems across the government where the systems are not speaking with one another. And if you just solve that simple problem, you would solve a huge amount of fraud.
Are you surprised? So one of the ways that, like one of the key tricks that the fraudsters pull is that they will use the fact that someone is marked as live, and as sort of just that Social Security number is marked as live in Social Security, and then get disability and unemployment insurance for a dead person. Because the databases don't talk to each other, all they got was from Social Security is like, is this person alive? Yes, they're not alive. It's falsely marked. Person is falsely marked as alive in Social Security. But they didn't. But that person, a fraudster can now get unemployment and disability from a dead person.
Thank you, Mr. Producer.
This is happening all the time,
at scale, and it's going on and on and on. This is the monster that's going after your Social Security.
You know something,
Charlie?
This single. I watched that interview, by the way.
Yeah,
and I said while I was watching it with my mom. Nicki had come in just a little bit later. I said, that has to be one of the greatest interviews I have ever seen. And the next day on the 5, Greg Gutfeld said that was by far the best interview Bret Baier has ever had on Fox.
It's illuminating.
It is extremely illuminating. And for any, 2 things here. If you have not watched that interview, you absolutely should.
Yes.
Absolutely should.
Agreed.
Number 2, if you are a person that is against DOGE, shh. I don't want to hear any more. I've heard what I needed to hear.
Social Security is going to be insolvent in less than 10 years, and these people are plugging the holes.
Yeah. Yep. You know, you sit here and you listen to these guys talk about how each one of these systems don't communicate with each other,
and there are reasons for that. Most of them technical, but some of them there are actual privacy reasons for some of that. But that can be overcome.
That can be overcome, and I could understand that there might be some privacy reasons, but they can be overcome. But you could keep them separate unless there's a need to cross-reference for a reason when you're having to check for certain things.
There are ways to do it with an intermediary.
Yeah.
So with an intermediary.
But think about this. Think about the number of people and could do it purposely.
You had 3.2 million people over the age of 120 collecting Social Security.
How much money?
Trace that to the bank
account. Think about that.
Personally, they all need to be prosecuted, and they have to and pay that money back. I don't know if it's possible to do that, but they do need to be prosecuted. I hope they could be.
Sounds like something.
If there's a check going out for somebody who's over 115, that checking account should be frozen until you find out what the deal is.
Yeah, I think you should verify all the above. And yeah. It's crazy because it'd be easier to cross-reference the database of people who are 115 in America, because there are over 110. I believe there's only 100 and something people in the world globally who are alive.
If you're over a certain age and you're below a certain age, you could cross-reference those ages to see if these people are getting money and getting business loans, and find out. I mean,
it's something that should be common sense.
You know,
it's something that's being fought against.
One more quick thing.
Okay.
The one thing that I hope does not do, I hope that when the next Democrat gets into office, that these connections are not disconnected.
They might. And so it has to be brought into law.
Yes.
That's right.
That's what it has to be.
Brought to law, yes.
So, and these men have done this not without a price to themselves. You know, the men who signed the Declaration of Independence, they all knew that they were signing their death warrant, right? These men have actually faced death threats, lawsuits, and most of these people are well-to-do. And Mr. Producer, go ahead and play this cut. This is their response as to, like, you guys are getting pushback on this. Why are you doing this? I think it's a good response.
the ways that the
Yep.
Are you
Thank
surprised at some of the legal efforts and some of the judges that have weighed in? There's about 8 or 10 now of these cases that are at least temporary holds. They're being challenged by the DOJ.
Right.
Are you surprised by that pushback?
Well, it's the D.C. Circuit is notorious for having a very far left bias, and when you look at the people close to some of these judges, where are they working? Oh, they're working at these NGOs. Oh, they're the ones getting this money. Does that seem like a system that lacks corruption? It sounds like corruption to me.
Are you surprised at some of the legal efforts and some of the judges that have weighed in?
Thank you. Yeah, so someone says this in the comment section, the perps never get caught or prosecuted, including the judges, including these judges who are acting way outside their boundaries. Well, again, like I said, you can't have judicial reform. It comes in the form of prosecuting people based on civil lawsuits, and you can do criminal under, it's 18 U.S.C. 242, under the color of law. If you deprive someone of their civil rights, it is up to a capital punishment. A lot of judges, if they feel like they cannot defend that they have maintained their oath of office, they will debench themselves. There is a way to go about that, and you can debench judges. My father's in the business of doing that. It is a good thing to go after these judges who are doing unlawful things in the name of the law. There is a way to do it. It's just hard. These remedies are not simple. Nothing worth fighting for was ever easy. But these men are willing to fight, and I think it's a beautiful thing.
It is. And, when I was listening to some of their stories, I'm thinking to myself, these guys absolutely do not need to be here. They have got all the money they need. They've got the life they want. They do not need to be here. And I wished that some of our Democratic friends would get some objective common sense and just take a deep look at some of this stuff and really come to an understanding, holy cow, I'm lined up incorrectly on some of these issues.
Correct.
I'm not saying that people on the left don't have valid points. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, and this would be true of any conservative or Republican, if you're just echoing a point without being able to justify your argument in a cohesive way, you should be quiet. You don't have anything to stand on. When you sit there and you just hate Trump for hating Trump, I don't want to hear from you. You're not helping me understand what we can do different for a win-win on all sides. All you're doing is just echoing garbage.
You're smelling a rotten egg. You're feeling to lay one. So to your point, why are you here? And I'll help you out, Mr. Producer. This is cut 31. Cut 31. Pull that one up for us.
Last thing, do you guys all see this as a patriotic duty? I mean, is that really what this is about?
It's essential.
Very much
I
so.
do, 100%. I was running 5 businesses in Houston, and I left that. I left great people to do this, and my wonderful wife said, go for it, and here I am. But I feel like this is me giving back to the country.
If we don't do this, we're sunk. The ship, unless this exercise is successful, the ship of America will sink. That's why we're doing it.
Last thing,
So,
do you
thank
guys
you,
all
Mr.
see
Producer.
this as a...
That right there,
That summarized it.
that right there, I don't think Elon is lying.
No.
I firmly believe he believes what he's saying, and he's
Oh,
correct.
Oh,
He is
yeah,
correct.
definitely.
And for the guy from Houston, I don't know if you'll ever hear this podcast, but if you do, thank you. Wife, thank you for encouraging him to go and try to make a difference. There are people that do not take that decision lightly, and we are grateful for it. Thank you.
Yep.
Most definitely.
Yep. So, with that said, we have a special one for y'all today. Nicki knows facts. Go ahead and pull it up. We're kind of changing gears here. We're going to have some fun with Michael, okay? Michael Malloy, Rasputin of the Bronx, is cut 33, Mr. Producer. Cut 33, Mr. Producer. There you go. Michael Malloy, Rasputin of the Bronx. Now, who is this guy, Miss Nicki?
Well, he was born in Ireland in 1893, ended up in New York City. He was a firefighter and a stationary engineer, but he became a homeless drunk. So in that condition, he kind of got acquainted with these 5 dudes, Tony Marino, Joseph Red Murphy, Francis something, I can't say the name, Hershey Green, and Daniel Kreinsberg. They were later dubbed as the Murder Trust. Now, this is really interesting. Tony Marino owned a speakeasy because it was during the days of Prohibition, okay?
So what's a speakeasy?
It's a underground bar.
Okay.
Because you can't drink at a real bar because it's Prohibition. But speakeasies were everywhere. Anyway, going on. So, good old Mike Malloy, he's a drunk. He's associated with the speakeasy. These 5 guys get together and they say, you know what? He's a drunk. He's eventually going to die. Why don't we go get some life insurance on him? So they take out some life insurance. They get him to sign the paperwork. They trick him. They think we're going to give him all the alcohol he can drink and he'll just die because that's what happens. Well, they give him a lot of alcohol, but guess what? He doesn't die. So the Murder Trust group, they think, okay, let's help him along a little bit. Let's add a little antifreeze to his liquor. Nothing happened. Huh. So then they said, let's try turpentine.
So, by the way, before we move on, so they're trying to kill him. So they put antifreeze in there. It turns out antifreeze, this is for you guys, liquor is the recommended remedy for antifreeze.
I have
poisoning.
that, yeah.
Is it really?
Yes, it is.
Further Every Day does not advocate for the drinking of
excessive of antifreeze. Correct. Thank you. Go ahead.
So the ethanol blocks the absorption of ethylene glycol
Ethylene
in the
glycol,
liver.
yeah.
So that's
Oh,
why that
wow.
was. So okay, so turpentine, the guy still lives. All right, well how about some horse liniment? Still breathing. And the all-time favorite?
They're pouring this into his drinks, and he keeps drinking.
It's this crazy story. So the all-time favorite, rat poison. And when the rat poison didn't work, Marino mixed in some shots of pure wood alcohol, pure methanol. But here's the deal. You said earlier about the antifreeze, but normal liquor helps to negate the methanol poisoning. Okay, so these guys, they even tried raw oysters soaked in wood alcohol, a sandwich with spoiled sardines mixed with poison and carpet tacks. This guy just refuses to die, and he just keeps on living. So then they think, okay, let's try this. It's very cold. It's in the winter. We're going to get him drunk. He's going to pass out. We're going to take him outside, take his shirt off. We're going to lay him in the snow. We're going to drop 5 gallons of water on his bare chest, and we're going to leave him there. He's going to freeze to death, right?
Die of hypothermia, yeah.
So this is what they do. Well, guess what? The police come along. They find him in the snow. They take him to a charity place and
a homeless shelter, and they reclothe him, and he's good to go. He's back out in the street.
Good to go. He survives. Oh, these poor guys. So then these 5 would-be killers, they grow impatient, and they decide they need to do something a little more lethal. So they find a taxi cab driver. His name's Harry Green, and they pay him to hit this guy. Get him drunk, take him out to the street, right? Mm-hmm. Taxi cab driver gets in the car, starts heading toward the drunk man, but he's awake enough to realize he gets out of the way. Taxi cab driver turns around, comes at him again, he gets out of the way. Well, this is getting a little frustrating. So now he steps on the gas. He hits Mike Malloy. He hears the thud on the front of his car, hits the windshield, falls on the ground, and the taxi cab driver says, you know, I got to make sure, so I'm going to back over him. Now, the 5 would-be killers, the friends, they're standing there, but here comes a car. So like, he's dead. Let's get out of here. We don't need to confirm this. He's dead. They go back to their speakeasy, and they're like, okay, we'll wait for the death report to come in. You know, it'll be on the news. They found this body. Days go by. They don't hear anything. A couple weeks go by. Nothing. 3 weeks later, in walks Mike Malloy. He's bruised. He's limping. He's been in the hospital for 3 weeks with broken bones and a battered body, but he lives. He lives. Now, they're really frustrated here. So they decide, we've had enough. This is it. We have tried everything, and this man won't die. So, you know what? We're going to get him drunk one more time. We're going to take him to the back of the speakeasy. We're going to hook him up to a hose, and we're going to connect it to the coal gas jet and turn it on. Well, that finally kills the poor guy. And then they bribe the doctor. They take his body, and they bribe the doctor to pronounce him dead of pneumonia.
What, a gasoline they get fixed?
Yeah, well, so fluid in the lungs.
Yeah. So the doctor, this is what he labels as death, pneumonia, and they bury him quickly. So we got to collect that insurance money, right? Now, they do collect the money. Now, these are crooked people, and it doesn't get divided up as evenly as it should have. So, there's some problems there. But there's a lot of talk going on about this.
About Michael the Durable.
Yes. And the police find out about it. And when they heard that he died, they dug up his body and did a forensics test on him. They arrest these guys.
Try cut 37 now.
Tony Marino, Joseph Red Murphy, Francis, and Daniel, they're sentenced to the electric chair. And by the way, they did not survive the electric chair.
Thankfully not.
Hershey Green was sentenced to prison, and the doctor was charged with a misdemeanor, failing to report a suspicious death to the police. Uh-oh. And that's the story of Michael Malloy.
So,
Mike Malloy.
Mike Malloy, the Rasputin of the Bronx. You can see why they called him Rasputin. That guy.
I put here, at first you don't succeed. Try again.
Poor fellow. But it lends to pick your friends carefully and your enemies more so, because So and by the way, it was the equivalent of $87,000 current that they did this for.
Yes.
So I mean, it was not a lot
of times, but $87,000 today.
Adjusted for inflation, which by the way speaks as to the fractionalized banking, how evil that is, but also $87,000 to kill just a drinking buddy. That's insane. Hey. It's split 5 ways. That's insane.
Like they always say, when you're a drunk and you have friends you drink with, they really aren't friends.
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think so. I have not ever been in that situation, and I think I'll stay out of it. So with that said, moving on to the Great Divorce, and you're going to know the one better than I will at this point, Mr. Producer. I think I've strayed you wrong there. It's my fault. Let's go ahead and pick up in Chapter 6. So if you can get us here, we're going to look at Chapter 6. If you can go to our overview, sir. Now, real quick. For those of you who are just now joining us, the Great Divorce is an allegorical representation of heaven and hell as they divorce, the great divorce of humanity, as they might be if final judgment wasn't exactly final, but if parole was available and God allowed the dissidents of hell to holiday on the edges of heaven, seeing the beauty and majesty, would they be wooed by the angelic and glorified representatives of heaven calling out to them. So, and later on, and we'll get to this, there's a description in here where this one author who is sent to the narrator speaks and says, if you come out of this place, if you come to higher heaven, this is not really heaven. If you come to high heaven, that will have always been purgatory. And for those of the people in the dim city, that will become hell eventually. And this is Lewis. He's just saying, hey, this is not my view of heaven and hell. This is not my eschatology. He goes into a great length at the foreword to say this is just an allegory exploring if God had set things out this way, how would the human condition play out? What would that look like if you could see the edge of heaven? And if you could potentially reach out and speak to those who've gone into the great beyond and find out where they've been. What is heaven like? Who is Christ? Would you be wooed, or would you be interested in heaven and in the gift that is offered? So today we're going to be looking at, next slide, chapter 6. And this one is kind of an interesting chapter. Sorry, sir. Heaven's magnitude. And the reason why I labeled it this way, this is not Lewis's label. I don't have it on the book that I'm reading. Thank you. I don't have any labels in there. The magnitude of heaven. Heaven is a hostile country. Actually, next slide, Mr. Producer. While in this heavenly country, the narrator witnesses this. Heaven's landscape is foreign, alien, even hostile to the ghosts from hell or purgatory, such as the narrator. Mist from the babbling brooks, the droplets are as rocks hitting him. Fruits and flowers are like lead weights, the food being utterly unprofitable for consumption to one such as himself. However, he witnesses this scene. Go ahead, Mr. Producer. Narrator, I could hardly help admiring this unhappy creature, this man who's attempting to pick apples. When I saw him arise, staggering to his feet, actually holding the smallest of the apples in his hands. He's been going at this for a while at this point in the book. He was lame from his hurts, and the weight bent him double. Yet even so, inch by inch, still availing himself of every scrap of cover, he set out on his Via Dolorosa to the bus, going back to hell with his torture in hand. This is a scene where you have this man, he is attempting to grab just the smallest of fruits from heaven. But he can't even grasp at it. He can't, it's this small little apple, the smallest of them, and it's like carrying 200 pounds as it's bruising his hand. Now, as this man starts to go back towards the bus, Mr. Producer, next slide, he hears a voice. Fool, put it down, a great voice said suddenly. It was quite unlike any other voice I had heard of so far. It was thunderous, yet liquid. With an appalling certainty, I knew that the waterfall itself was speaking, and I saw now, though it didn't cease to look like a waterfall, that it was also a bright angel who stood like one crucified against the rocks and poured himself perpetually down towards the forest and land with joy. The next slide is the conclusion of this thought, and then I want to open this up to y'all. Fool, he said, put it down. You cannot take it back. There is not room for it in hell. Stay here and learn to eat such apples. The very leaves and blades of grass in the wood will delight to teach you. Whether the ghost heard or not, I do not know. At any rate, after pausing for a few minutes, it braced itself anew for its agonies and continued with even greater caution till I lost sight of it. This ghost is trying to take this fruit of heaven back to hell. Now, if you read the book further, you'll realize that this fruit will not fit. Hell is a nothing, whereas heaven is an expanse of everything. Mm-hmm. What is Lewis attempting to illustrate with this chapter? It's a fantastic idea.
It is, and I think that the depth of I'm having trouble coming up with the words to explain C.S. Lewis and how he was thinking.
It was esoteric, but
yes,
I think that the goodness of heaven is not able to be or prosper in what is going to be hell, because he has and he's trying to get these fruit. He's not even able. He's trying to get all these different fruit. He can't even pick them up. They're so heavy, and he gets the smallest one, and it's like, 1,000 pounds. He's trying to pick it up and bring it, and this voice is telling him, you can't take that, man.
It's not going to fit.
It's right. It's not even going to fit on the bus, man. You can't bring it.
Heaven
and
is
it's
more
not going to work. It's not going to go.
And this fellow, we were talking about this before. This is the fellow who was the intellectual who was saying, there's no commerce down in hell. There's no commerce, and that's why everything's falling apart. That's why, if I remember correctly, this is the fellow who was saying that we need to have a trade, and once we get trade, by the way, this is where conservatism fails if it doesn't have God at its root.
Correct.
The idea of economic conservatism as its own good. It is a emanation. It is the light coming from the bulb. It is not the bulb. It is the source. It is not the waterfall coming down. It's the river that is feeding the waterfall. This guy is trying to take this down to hell, but he doesn't even realize heaven is real, more real than this earth, and much more real than hell.
Yeah.
And so what Lewis is attempting to articulate is imagine a holiness in a reality. What if hell, and I kind of came to this conclusion before reading this book, but it's kind of fun that I'm reading this and I'm finding that C.S. Lewis has kind of walked that path already that I've walked. I'm not somehow special on this. What if God's wrath is like the wrath of this countryside, where the very water droplets are like rocks hitting you in the face? Because God is more real. His righteousness, his holiness. What if his wrath is his existence? Not a passive. I'm not saying passive. But again, I suspect that hell itself, the torments of hell, is God's holiness in realities hitting you when you're out of alignment, when you have failed to be in alignment with God.
Thinking of that on what you're saying, I don't know if any of y'all have ever done this. Have you ever rode a motorcycle when it's raining, not have a face shield on or anything?
That's a great comparison.
It feels like
sandpaper,
needles
hitting your face. Yeah.
hitting you. I mean, literally like needles hitting you in the face and going in to your skin. It is
awful,
an unreal feeling.
I think
Amazing.
that's a great comparison.
Yeah.
Just imagine a holy God who is, you can't have, and people get taken aback when I say this. This is not original to me, but you cannot have love without hate. And it just is an apologetic moment. And every time I say this, people always jump back and say, well, hate's the opposite of love. No, it's not. Let me explain. Think of your kid, or if you don't have children, think of your pet. You have a small child, you have a small dog. Someone has been taking care of this entity that you love, and you love this small child. We'll say it's a child, and the babysitter's coming back, and you're walking down the street, and all of a sudden the babysitter raises their foot up and then stomps your child right at the knee, snapping their leg in half, and they have a compound fracture and they're bleeding. Most of you just had a very vivid reaction to that.
Yep.
You hate what I just said happened in your mind to the real or proverbial child. Okay? You hate what happened. You love the child. You may not hate the person, but you have an intense, righteous expression in your soul right now. Now, what you do with it is either righteous or unrighteous. We can have that conversation. But God loves everyone whom he's created. He hates sin, that which would make you incompatible with God, that which would turn you into something that you should not be. What if that is not a decision, but rather that whole set of logic, reason, love, right, wrong. Right, we'll just speak about right, because evil is just a privation of good. If good is an emanation, not from God's imagination, but from God's essence. And I believe this is what Lewis is attempting to articulate here. If good is an emanation from the essence of God, then the high country of heaven will be hostile to those who are not conformed to the image of Christ, made like unto him, people who have no transformation from a relationship with Christ. That will be hell. in its own way if God is unbridled upon you. Now, it also says that there's a place that's cordoned off, a lake of fire, where God's wrath pours out. And you read Revelations, I believe it's 14:8, I believe. Fact check me if you will. It says the smoke of their torment rises up before the Lamb and the angels forever and ever. God is not absent from hell. Christ is there in their presence. Where are you not, O God? In the highest heights of heaven, in the depths of Sheol, you are there. So, again, I find that this is very liberating when doing apologetics to people on the plane, people who are hurt by the church. It's very, very helpful to say, what if, well, hell is punitive. Is it? Is it punitive, or is it the natural consequence? Is it literally nature taking its course? Not that God doesn't have agency. He has agency, and he has righteous judgment. But God is justice. God is true love. And I think Lewis is, in his own way, attempting to lay that out. I find it's a really interesting chapter.
Absolutely.
Oh,
I do as well.
yeah.
The book is really, really good. And if you haven't started reading the book, get it. If you've got your favorite reading platform, get it.
It's worthwhile.
It is very worthwhile. And look, if you're reading and you're having a little trouble getting started, and we did, I mean, the first couple of chapters, that
I didn't understand.
you gotta wrap your head around
Yes.
it for a moment, and that's part of the reason why we're going through this. C.S. Lewis has got to be one of the greatest thinkers that we've seen in our lifetime.
Absolutely.
And I think another person is Francis Schaeffer. That's another one. But anyway, get the book.
Worth the read. Next week we'll be in chapter 7. So worth the read. Absolutely recommend. We'll be in chapter 7, and they are short chapters. You can find it online, or you can find audiobooks on YouTube or Kindle or your favorite wherever.
Yep.
And YouTube's
great.
free, and they're great. Miss Nicki, final thoughts for the day.
Well, I guess the story that I focused on the most.
I knew she was coming to it. I knew it.
Newest come to what?
No,
Matt Malloy.
No. I've really been following the Ukraine-Russia. And you know what's interesting is I've been following the people who are on the front lines on both sides of it, and listening to other people in other countries, newscasters and things, and I think you get a different perspective.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting to listen to see how other people are looking at the war. So that's my main focus has been the last couple of weeks. And my husband keeps...
I really thought you were going to Michael Malloy.
No!
That's fun.
That was so sad. It was really, I mean, it's a funny story, but it's really sad.
terrible. The
It's
poor
really
guy.
so sad that you are a homeless, drunk person and nobody cares.
Yeah, it is sad.
Yep.
Charlie.
You know, I find I think the DOGE interview for me has to be one of the most compelling things I've seen on TV in a
It's
long
worth the watch.
time.
It's 15 minutes.
It
It's worth the
really
watch.
is. And I just want to, I don't know if we have any of you on listening right now, but if you're on that left side of thinking, the more progressive side, I really want to encourage you, just give that an objective listen and just ask some really simple common sense questions. We're not here trying to put down left people, progressive people. If you want to argue points with some kind of substance behind them, we can talk, we can debate. If you want to just espouse stuff for the sake of hate and not contributing any type of meaningful solution, that's where we really have trouble. And some of our politicians are just, they should not be in Congress or the Senate because they cannot articulate a simple thought.
Mm-hmm. Steve.
Yeah, kind of going along on Charlie's thought. I really think that the American people need to stay on top of the DOGE ideas and what's going on with them because, you know, our country has been in such financial trouble. And if, you know, you look at for some reason, people think a government needs to run like it's supposed to be in a failure, in a debt all the time. For some reason, I don't understand that. Why it's supposed to be in trillions of dollars in debt. It's because I don't understand that.
It's because the banking clans want that.
That's what exactly right. For some reason, and they've got everybody convinced that it's supposed to be that way.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I don't know why, but everybody needs to come back to reality to understand that we don't have to be that way. And if they look at what's going on and see what's happening right now, we don't have to be that way.
Correct.
No, we don't. We shouldn't.
We
be
don't
that way.
have to be that way. And what DOGE is doing
Giving
is
us our money
proving
back.
that, and they're showing that.
They're giving us our money back. And
Exactly.
They're saving what we're doing. So as a nation, as an experiment, and the American experiment, I think it's a great thing.
Agreed.
I'd say this, just in summation of the week. Just remember, we are in a spiritual war. I know I say this all the time, and it might sound trite at this point, but we are in a spiritual warfare. The enemy of your soul desires to devour and to destroy you. There are a lot of ways that he goes about that. Recently, I was in a Bible study, and we were talking, and this came up. The devil has to co-opt the things of God.
Yes.
Because he cannot create, he can only mimic. It's an interesting feature that you will see throughout the Bible of the devil, that he cannot seem to create anything new.
No.
He can only mimic, which I believe solidifies his status as a creation. He is a creation. We cannot create anything new as humans. We can only mimic, and we can take things that are already provided. The laws of logic, the rules of the universe have been laid out. We can only mimic. God asked us to recreate, to populate, to make after our own kind. Satan wants to take that and pervert it. He wants to make of his own kind. But the problem is he can't do that using his own. You look at the left's agenda. They have to create the Handmaid's Tale. I almost forgot the name of that crazy movie. They have to create the Handmaid's Tale to be able to support the LGBT agenda. You have to have women providing surrogacy for homosexual couples. That is not an artifact of the right. That is an artifact of the left. You have to co-opt the good things. They have to make arguments that Signalgate is worse than Benghazi.
Uh-oh.
Can't do it.
Because they didn't do a good job with Benghazi. And the first time, they have to co-opt the outrage. They have to co-opt what is righteous, what's right, what's true, and they have to bend it. Now, all that to say, this week, I think it's been a rough week. It's been a black eye on the Trump administration. One that I think the Trump administration is going to get over. We're just going to get past it. It'll be great. I don't think it's anything that's going to stay or last, and I think Waltz should stay.
And they own it. They own it.
They need to own it. They need to own it all the way. They are owning it. All the way. They need to own it all the way, and we need to get past that. We need to be sources of truth that are reliable, and we have to own it when we mess up. If you do those two things, I think it's going to be a lot harder for Satan to co-opt the narrative.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do have the story, and Satan always has another story. But we have the story, the best story, the greatest story ever told.
Amen.
And this week, be about spreading that story. With that said, got nothing else for you. We love you so much. Have a wonderful week.
Bye.
Amen.
One last thing. Question around the room. Favorite thing about the last 2 months in the Trump administration? We're now at 2 months. Favorite thing about the last 2 months of the Trump administration? What's the most interesting thing that's happened?
I'm going to put it at a 40,000 foot level. Hurricane Trump has blown over the left.
That, you can't say that. That's all of ours.
I will say other countries that are saying that he's having an effect in their country.
I think so.
I like that too. The effect that he has in other countries and the economic rebound that I'm beginning to see.
I get an extra one. How about the self-deporting?
I think
I
it's
like
people
that,
self-deporting.
too.
Hey, look, I love the new election executive order that just got overshadowed by all of this nonsense with Signalgate. So, guys,
And
clean
the
up your act.
new
I love
2A
you guys.
amendment stuff.
Pete Hegseth, you guys are awesome. Keep it clean and keep doing good work. And watch out because you are under attack. And
right.
they're gonna lie, steal, and try to move that. So, anyway, we got anything else for you? Love you so much. Goodbye.